All right, check this out. What if an AI could hear, say, the roar of a lion and just picture it instantly? Today, we're going to dive into IMAGEBIND. It's this new model from Meta AI that is teaching computers to do something pretty incredible, not just see or hear, but to actually understand the world by connecting all of its senses together.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around what's happening here, let's start with what feels like a little magic trick. The question is pretty simple, right? Can a machine listen to a sound and then, paint a picture of it in its own mind?
So, imagine this. We play an AI a sound. That's it. We're not giving it any other clues, no text descriptions, no pictures, nothing. Just the raw audio of waves crashing on a shore.
And bam! From just that sound, it generates this, a totally photorealistic image that just nails the scene. Now, this is the important part. It's not just matching key words here. The AI is truly genuinely connecting the sound to the sight. So, how in the world does it do that?
All right, to get this, we've got to pull back the curtain a little bit. We need to talk about the secret language that pretty much all modern AI models use to make sense of, well, everything.
So, it all comes down to this one key idea, an embedding. You can think of it like a digital fingerprint or maybe a unique address for literally anything an AI can perceive. It takes something super complex, like a photo, and just boils it down to a simple list of numbers. The process itself is actually pretty straightforward. You feed a piece of data, let's say a picture of a dog, into this thing called an encoder. The encoder does its magic, crunches the image, and turns it into that list of numbers. And what it's really doing is placing it as a single point on this huge conceptual map. But the really cool part is what this map is all about.
See, this isn't a geographical map, it's a map of meaning. And on this map, distance is everything. It tells you how similar two things are. So the point for dog and the point for puppy, they're going to be right next to each other. But the point for car, that's going to be way, way over on the other side of the map.
Okay, so these maps of meaning are super powerful, right? But until very recently, AI had this massive problem. It didn't just have one map, it had a bunch of different maps that couldn't talk to each other at all. Basically, every sense lived in its own little world. The AI's map for sounds, it was in a totally different universe from its map for images. And that was in another universe from its map for text. They all spoke completely different languages. So the idea of a dog in a picture had zero connection to the sound of a bark.
But then, the folks behind IMAGEBIND had this absolutely brilliant idea. And it was totally inspired by how our own brains work. They realized that for us humans, images are kind of a natural hub that connects all our other senses.
So they decided to use the image as a kind of universal translator, the Rosetta Stone for all the AI's senses. The idea was actually pretty simple, but it was also profound. They just asked, what if we teach the AI how to connect everything back to an image? So you link the sound of waves to a picture of a beach, and you also link the word beach to that exact same picture.
Okay, so the big idea is connect everything back to an image. But here's where it gets wild. When you force every single sense to align with this one common visual language, something totally unexpected and honestly kind of magical starts to happen. Think about it like this. You're teaching the AI two separate things. First, you teach it how to link the sound of waves to an image of a beach. Then, in a totally separate step, you teach it to link the written word beach to that same image.
And this is the magic part. The AI was never, ever directly trained to connect the sound of waves to the word beach. But because they both now point to the exact same image on its internal map, the AI just figures out the connection, all by itself. It's a brand new skill that just emerges for free without any extra work.
This amazing phenomenon is really the secret sauce of IMAGEBIND. It's called emergent alignment. The model is learning these new connections that it was never explicitly taught, all because it's using the image as a common bridge between everything else.
Okay, so we have this new unified map where all the senses can talk to each other. What's the payoff? What can we actually do with this? Let's get back to some of those mind-bending applications. This is where things get really, really creative. Because everything is now just a list of numbers, a coordinate, on the same giant map, we can start doing math with concepts. We can literally perform what's called embedding arithmetic. We can add and subtract ideas across different senses.
Okay, for example, what do you think happens if we take the digital fingerprint for an image of fruit, and we literally mathematically add the digital fingerprint for the sound of birds chirping, while the AI takes that new number, that new coordinate,
and searches its massive map to see what's there. And what it finds are images that contain both of those ideas, like pictures of birds sitting on a fruit tree. It's actually composing a new concept across sight and sound.
And look, this isn't just some cool party trick. The performance here is seriously impressive, basically state-of-the-art. So take audio classification. There's a specialized model called Audio Clip that was trained specifically on tons of audio text data, and it gets a score of 68.6%. Now look at IMAGEBIND. It learned this connection for free, emergently, right? It gets 66.9%. It is almost as good as the specialist model without ever being directly trained for that job. That is just incredible efficiency.
And it gets even bigger than this, because it's not just limited to sight and sound. The IMAGEBIND model actually connects 6 different types of data, what they call modalities. It links images to text, audio, 3D depth, thermal or heat data, and even motion data from sensors. So just try to imagine an AI that doesn't just see a car, but also understands its 3D shape, hears its engine, sees its heat signature, and feels its motion, and understands all of that as a single unified concept. So really, the huge takeaway here is this shift. We're moving away from AI that can just see or just hear to an AI that understands the relationship between seeing and hearing. We are finally starting to build AI that perceives the world as this interconnected whole, which is a lot more like how we do it. And that just blows the doors open for incredible new possibilities, new creative tools, new ways to make scientific discoveries, and it leaves us with this massive question. What really becomes possible when a machine can truly fuse all of its senses together?